The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Whitmore and Associates, casting golden rectangles across the polished marble floors. I stood in the elevator, clutching my leather portfolio against my chest, watching the numbers climb. Floor 12. My destination. My battlefield. My name is Ava Mitchell. I'm 31 years old and I've worked harder than anyone in this building to earn my place here. That's not arrogance. It's fact. While my colleagues were attending prep schools and summer internships arranged by their parents' connections, I was working double shifts at a diner in Southside Chicago, saving every penny for community college. While they vacationed in the Hamptons, I was studying until 3 in the morning, determined to transfer to a 4-year university. And I did. Full scholarship. Graduated top of my class. But none of that matters when you walk into a room and people see only one thing: the color of your skin. The elevator doors opened and I stepped into the reception area of the marketing division. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh coffee, the kind that costs $8 a cup. I couldn't afford that coffee. I brought my own from home in a thermos that had seen better days. "Good morning, Ava." The receptionist, a young white woman named Mia, barely looked up from her computer. Her greeting was technically polite, but her tone suggested I was an inconvenience simply by existing. "Good morning, Mia." I kept my voice warm, professional. "Kill them with kindness," my grandmother always said. "Don't give them ammunition." I walked past the rows of cubicles toward my small desk in the corner, the one farthest from the windows, closest to the supply closet. When I'd started here 2 years ago, I'd been promised a better workspace. Once something opened up. Nothing ever opened up, of course. At least not for me. My supervisor, Charlotte Harrington, was already at her desk, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer suit probably costing more than my monthly rent. She glanced up as I passed, her ice blue eyes tracking my movement with barely concealed disdain. "Ava, you're here." Her tone made it sound like an accusation. "I'm always here, Mrs. Harrington, usually before everyone else." She returned to her computer screen. "The Henderson account files need to be reorganized. Again, apparently your system wasn't clear enough for the team." My system was perfect. I'd created a color-coded, cross-referenced filing method that anyone with basic reading skills could follow. But I knew better than to argue. "I'll take care of it." I settled into my chair, the worn fabric familiar against my back. Around me, the office buzzed with morning activity, colleagues chatting about their weekends, their vacations, their children's private school achievements. Nobody chatted with me. Not anymore. When I'd first started, I'd tried. I'd smiled, made small talk, brought homemade cookies to share. But the invisible wall was always there. The subtle shifts when I approached a group. The conversations that died when I tried to join. The lunch invitations that somehow never included me. It was Emma Chen who'd finally said it out loud about 6 months in. She hadn't known I was in the bathroom stall when she'd walked in with her friend. "I don't know why they hired her," Emma had said. "She doesn't fit in here. You can tell she's not, you know, one of us. One of us." Such simple words. Such profound exclusion. I'd learned to keep my head down after that. Do my work. Excel quietly. Document everything. The morning passed in a blur of spreadsheets and reports. I was working on a presentation for a potential new client, a project that should have been assigned to someone with my qualifications, but instead had been given to Oliver, a junior associate who'd been here 6 months and already had a corner office. He'd asked me to help with the research, which meant I was doing all the actual work while he'd take the credit. "Ava." Charlotte's voice cut through my concentration. "Conference room. Now. The team meeting is starting." I gathered my notes and followed her down the hallway. The conference room was already full. 12 people seated around a gleaming mahogany table, not a single face that looked like mine. I took my usual seat at the far end, near the door. The meeting droned on. Revenue projections, client updates, strategic initiatives. I listened, took notes, and waited for the moment I knew would come. "The Thornton campaign," Charlotte announced. "We need fresh ideas. Anyone?" I raised my hand. I'd spent 3 weeks developing a comprehensive strategy for this campaign. Market research, demographic analysis, creative concepts, all meticulously prepared. Charlotte's eyes swept over me as if I hadn't moved. Benjamin, any thoughts? Benjamin Crawford, whose father played golf with the company's founder, cleared his throat. Well, I was thinking we could target the urban market. Make it more street. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. Interesting, Charlotte nodded. Very fresh. Actually, I heard myself say, I've prepared a detailed proposal. If I could share, we're looking for strategic thinking, Ava, not administrative support. Charlotte's smile was sharp as a blade. But thank you for your enthusiasm. The room shifted uncomfortably. A few people exchanged glances. Nobody defended me. They never did. After the meeting, I returned to my desk with my presentation still clutched in my hands. 3 weeks of work, dismissed in 3 seconds. Hey, a voice startled me. I looked up to find James Porter standing by my cubicle. He was one of the few people in the office who occasionally acknowledged my existence with something resembling warmth. That was rough in there. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be. He hesitated. Your work is good, Ava. Everyone knows it. Even if they won't admit it. Thanks, James. I managed a small smile. But knowing and acknowledging are different things here. He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes, then walked away. Small kindnesses. I collected them like precious stones. The afternoon brought more of the same. Filing. Organizing. Cleaning up other people's messes. Watching colleagues with half my experience get praised for mediocre work while my contributions remained invisible. At 4 o'clock, something unusual happened. Charlotte called another meeting. Just for the senior team, she said. But as people filed into the conference room, I noticed whispers, excited glances. Something was happening. I pretended to focus on my computer screen while straining to hear fragments of conversation. CEO is visiting. Never comes to this floor. Heard he's evaluating departments. The CEO, William Thornton III. I'd never met him. Of course. In 2 years, I'd seen him exactly once. A tall figure in an expensive suit, walking through the lobby with an entourage. He existed in a different stratosphere, far above the daily indignities of the 12th floor. The meeting lasted an hour. When people emerged, the energy had shifted. Charlotte was practically glowing. Everyone, she announced. I'm pleased to inform you that Mr. Thornton himself will be touring our department tomorrow. I expect everyone to be on their best behavior. We want to show him what we're capable of. What we're capable of. As if she hadn't spent 2 years ensuring I'd never get the chance to show anyone anything. I stayed late that night, as I always did. The office emptied around me, lights flickering off one by one until only my desk lamp remained. I liked these quiet hours. No sideways glances. No microaggressions disguised as jokes. Just me and my work. I was reviewing the Thornton proposal one more time when I heard footsteps. Soft. Measured. Not the clicking heels of Charlotte or the heavy tread of the security guard. Working late? I looked up, startled. A man stood in the dim light of the hallway. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair graying slightly at the temples. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car. But his posture was relaxed, curious rather than commanding. Yes, just finishing up some things. Mind if I ask what? Something about his directness caught me off guard. People in this office didn't ask me about my work. They assumed it wasn't worth asking about. A client proposal, I heard myself say. The Thornton campaign. His eyebrows rose slightly. The urban market strategy? No, something different. I hesitated, then, I don't know why, I handed him the folder. A comprehensive approach based on actual demographic research and consumer behavior analysis. He took the folder, opened it, and began to read. I watched his face, waiting for the dismissal that always came. It didn't come. Instead, he read page after page, his expression growing more intent. Minutes passed. Finally, he looked up. This is exceptional work. 4 words. They hit me like sunlight after a long winter. Thank you, I managed. Who else has seen this? No one. I tried to present it in the meeting today, but I trailed off, the familiar shame burning in my chest. He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if reaching some private decision. I'm William, by the way. William Thornton, the CEO. The realization must have shown on my face because he smiled. A genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. And you are? Ava Mitchell. Well, Ava Mitchell. He handed back the folder. I think we need to talk more about this proposal. But not tonight. You've been here long enough. Get some rest. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the hallway. I sat there for a long time after he left, my heart pounding, my mind racing. Something had shifted. I could feel it in my bones. I just didn't know yet how much everything was about to change. The next morning, I arrived at the office an hour early, my nerves humming with an electricity I couldn't name. Had last night really happened? Had the CEO of the entire company actually read my proposal and called it exceptional? Or had I imagined the whole thing, my desperate need for recognition conjuring a fantasy? The elevator opened on the 12th floor, and immediately I knew something was different. The energy was charged, frantic. People rushed past with coffee cups and folders, fixing their hair, straightening their ties. He's already here, Mia hissed from the reception desk. Been here since 7. He's in Charlotte's office. My stomach dropped. William Thornton was in Charlotte's office, the same Charlotte who'd spent 2 years systematically erasing my contributions. What were they discussing? Was he asking about me? Was he telling her about my proposal? Or was last night already forgotten, just another moment of false hope in a long history of disappointments? I walked to my desk with measured steps, forcing myself to breathe. Whatever happened, I would face it with dignity. I'd survived worse than this. The morning passed in excruciating slowness. I could see the corner of Charlotte's office from my desk, could see figures moving behind the frosted glass. Occasionally, laughter drifted out, Charlotte's artificial tinkling laugh, and a deeper sound that might have been William's. At 10:30, the door opened. Charlotte emerged first, her face arranged in a smile so tight it looked painful. Team meeting, she announced. Conference room now, all hands. We filed in, taking our usual seats. I positioned myself by the door as always, invisible and unimportant. Then William walked in, and the room fell silent. In the fluorescent lighting of the conference room, he looked different than he had last night. More formal, more distant. He wore authority like a second skin, his presence commanding attention without effort. His eyes swept the room. For a fraction of a second, they landed on me, then moved on. Good morning, everyone. His voice was calm, measured. I've been reviewing the department's performance, and I have some observations to share. Charlotte beamed from her seat at his right hand. We're honored to have you here, Mr. Thornton. William, please. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Now, I understand there's been some exceptional work happening in this department, work that perhaps hasn't received proper recognition. Something flickered in Charlotte's expression. A crack in the perfect facade. I've been particularly impressed by a proposal for the Thornton campaign, William continued. Innovative, thoroughly researched, the kind of strategic thinking this company needs. Yes, Charlotte jumped in quickly. The team has been working very hard on that account. Oliver has done particularly impressive work. The proposal I'm referring to, William interrupted gently, was developed by Ava Mitchell. Silence. Complete, devastating silence. Every head in the room swiveled toward me. I felt the weight of their stares, confusion, disbelief, and something else in some faces. Hostility. Ava? Charlotte's voice was sharp. But she's administrative support. She doesn't do strategic work. That's not what her proposal suggests. William's gaze met mine, steady and encouraging. Ms. Mitchell, would you care to present your ideas to the team? I stood slowly, my legs trembling beneath me. This was the moment I'd dreamed about for 2 years, and now that it was here I was terrified. But I'd come too far to turn back. The current approach to the Thornton campaign targets what you're calling the urban market, I began, my voice stronger than I felt. But that term is vague and, frankly, coded. What we should be targeting is the emerging middle-class consumer base across all demographics, people who aspire to quality but respond to authenticity. I walked through my research, my analysis, my recommendations. With each point, I watched the faces around me shift. Some nodded reluctantly. Others crossed their arms, refusing to acknowledge what was right in front of them. Charlotte's expression had transformed from polite interest to barely concealed fury. "Interesting thoughts," she said when I finished, "but hardly appropriate for our target demographic. Perhaps you don't understand the nuances of—" "I think she understands the nuances better than anyone in this room." William's voice was quiet but final. "This proposal moves forward. Ms. Mitchell will lead the project." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. "With all due respect," Charlotte began, "Ava doesn't have the experience for—" "Then she'll gain it." William stood. "I expect full departmental support. I'll be checking in personally on the project's progress." He left without another word. But as he passed my chair, his hand brushed my shoulder. So light it might have been accidental. So deliberate I felt it burning through my blazer. The door closed behind him, and the room erupted. "This is ridiculous," Emma hissed. "She's been here 2 years and never done anything like this. She probably stole someone else's work." "Convenient timing, isn't it?" Oliver's voice dripped with implication. "CEO shows up and suddenly she's got this brilliant proposal ready?" "I've been working on it for 3 weeks," I said quietly. "I tried to present it in yesterday's meeting." "Oh, please." Charlotte's mask had fully cracked now. "We all know how this works. Some people get ahead through hard work. Others find alternative methods." The insinuation hung in the air like poison. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my files at their smug, privileged faces and walk out forever. But I thought of my grandmother, who'd cleaned houses for 50 years and never let anyone see her break. "The proposal speaks for itself," I said evenly. "I'm happy to explain my methodology to anyone who's interested in learning." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "We'll see how long this lasts." The days that followed were a masterclass in sabotage. My files disappeared from the shared drive, accidentally deleted. IT said. My meeting invitations went missing. Emails I sent were never received. Emails sent to me were conveniently lost. And the whispers, the endless whispers, sleeping her way to the top. Diversity hire. Don't know what he sees in her. I documented everything. Every missing file. Every failed email. Every overheard comment. I kept meticulous records in a notebook I carried everywhere, writing in a code only I understood. But the hardest part wasn't the professional sabotage. It was the isolation. Nobody sat with me at lunch anymore. Conversations stopped when I approached. I'd become a ghost in my own workplace, visible only as an object of resentment. Except for William. He found reasons to stop by the 12th floor. Reviews of campaign progress, he called them. Check-ins on the department's performance. But somehow these visits always included a few minutes at my desk, discussing ideas, sharing insights. And those moments, God help me, those moments were the only thing keeping me sane. "You look tired," he said one afternoon, leaning against my cubicle wall. "Busy project." I shrugged. "Big responsibilities." "That's not what I mean." His voice softened. "Are they giving you trouble?" I looked up at him. At this man who controlled an empire, who could buy and sell everyone in this room without noticing the cost, and I saw something unexpected, genuine concern, real compassion. "I can handle it," I said. "I know you can. That doesn't mean you should have to." He reached out, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought he was going to touch my face. Instead, he adjusted a stack of papers on my desk that didn't need adjusting. "Have dinner with me," he said quietly. "Tomorrow night. We can discuss the campaign somewhere without—" He gestured vaguely at the office around us. All this. Every warning in my head screamed no. This was dangerous. This was exactly what they accused me of. This would give them ammunition they'd use to destroy me. Yes, I heard myself say. The dinner changed everything. William took me to a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood I'd never been able to afford. No white tablecloths or pretentious menus, just warm lighting. Good food and conversation that flowed like water. He told me about his father's expectations, the pressure of the family name, about a marriage that had ended because his wife wanted the money, but not the man, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who saw only his bank account. I told him about growing up in Southside, about my mother working 3 jobs, about being the first in my family to graduate college, about the casual cruelty I faced every day in his company, the comments, the exclusion, the assumption that I didn't belong. "They're wrong about you," he said, his hand covering mine on the table. "They're wrong about everything. They won't see it that way. Then they'll learn." After that night, we were careful, painfully, frustratingly careful. Separate arrivals at the office, professional distance in public, stolen moments in empty conference rooms, in his car after late meetings, in the quiet hours when the building was dark. But secrets in an office are impossible to keep. 2 weeks after our first dinner, I arrived to find a folder on my desk. No label, no note, just photographs. Me and William at the restaurant, me getting into his car, me standing close to him in the parking garage, his hand on my arm. My blood ran cold. At the bottom of the stack, a handwritten note. "Did you really think you could get away with this? Ghetto trash doesn't belong in his world, and everyone will know it soon." I recognized the handwriting. Charlotte. She was waiting in her office when I looked up. Through the glass, I could see her smile. Triumphant, vicious, final. The trap was closing, and I was standing right in the middle of it. For 3 days, I said nothing. I went to work. I did my job. I watched Charlotte watch me, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to run. But she didn't know what I came from. She didn't know that my grandmother had survived Jim Crow, that my mother had raised 3 children alone while white women clutched their purses when she walked by. She didn't know that strength wasn't something I wore, it was something I was. And she didn't know what I'd spent 2 years collecting. The monthly leadership meeting was scheduled for Friday, all department heads, the executive team, and William. Charlotte had arranged to make a special presentation. She hadn't told anyone what it was about, but I knew. I saw it in her satisfied smile and the way she looked at me like I was already finished. I requested 5 minutes on the agenda. Charlotte agreed, probably assuming I was going to resign publicly and save her the trouble. The conference room on the executive floor was larger than the one we used downstairs, all glass and chrome and power. I arrived early, taking a seat near the front. Not by the door, not invisible, not anymore. William entered with the other executives, his expression carefully neutral. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I gave him the smallest nod. "Trust me," that nod said. "Whatever happens, trust me." Charlotte opened the meeting with her usual performance, sales figures, projections, praise for her team. Then she smiled, and I felt the temperature drop. "Before we conclude, I have a matter of significant concern to bring to the leadership's attention." She pressed a button on her laptop and the screen behind her lit up with an image. Me and William at dinner. Murmurs rippled through the room. "It has come to my attention that a junior employee in my department has been engaging in an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Thornton." Charlotte's voice dripped with false concern. "I believe this represents a serious breach of professional ethics and potentially explains certain unusual decisions regarding project assignments." More photos appeared, each one carefully chosen to look as damning as possible. "This woman," Charlotte continued, "was given significant responsibilities despite having no qualifications beyond—" She paused, letting the insinuation hang. "Personal charm. I move that she be immediately terminated and that an investigation be launched into any decisions Mr. Thornton may have made under her influence." The room was silent. Every eye turned to William, waiting for him to deny it, to throw me under the bus, to do what powerful men always did. He sat very still. Then he said, "Ms. Mitchell, I believe you requested time to address the meeting." I stood. My hands weren't shaking. My voice wouldn't shake either. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton." I walked to the front of the room, taking my time. Let them look at me. Let them see me clearly. "Mrs. Harrington has presented a compelling narrative," I began. "The scheming lower-class woman seducing the powerful CEO. It's a story as old as time, isn't it? And it's very convenient, because it confirms everything many of you already want to believe about people who look like me." I let that land. Some faces flushed, others hardened. But here's the problem with Mrs. Harrington's story. It's not true. I pulled out my own folder, the one I'd been building for 2 years, the one filled with documentation so thorough, so meticulous, that no lawyer in the country could dismiss it. Let's start with the proposal that supposedly earned me special treatment. I handed copies around the room. This is the presentation I prepared for the Thornton campaign. Date stamped 3 weeks before Mr. Thornton ever visited our department, backed up on my personal drive with metadata, proving when each element was created. I watched Charlotte's smile flicker. Here's the email I sent Mrs. Harrington requesting time to present this proposal. I distributed more papers. And here's her response, or rather, her lack of response, followed by an email to Oliver assigning him the same project and encouraging him to, quote, "not worry about starting from scratch." Oliver shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But let's talk about the real pattern here. I advanced to the next section. These are my performance reviews from the past 2 years. Every single one praises my work product while somehow concluding that I'm not ready for advancement. Compare them to reviews for white colleagues with less experience, shorter tenure, and objectively inferior results. Papers shuffled. Someone coughed. This is a log of every assignment I completed that was credited to someone else, every meeting I was excluded from, every project I was denied. I looked directly at Charlotte. Would you like me to read the dates? Because I can. All 147 of them. Charlotte's face had gone pale. Now let's discuss the photographs Mrs. Harrington so thoughtfully provided. I turned to the images still displayed on the screen. Yes, Mr. Thornton and I have had dinner. Yes, we've had private conversations. But here's what's interesting about these photos. They were taken by an employee using company time and resources for personal surveillance. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. I pulled out the final document. This is a signed statement from building security confirming that Charlotte Harrington requested access to the parking garage camera footage, and this is the IT department's log showing she accessed my personal calendar without authorization. The room had gone deadly quiet. Mrs. Harrington hasn't uncovered an inappropriate relationship. She's manufactured a narrative to destroy someone who threatened her position by being better at her job. I looked around the table, meeting each executive's eyes. You can believe her story, or you can look at 2 years of documented evidence and ask yourselves what kind of company you want this to be. I sat down. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then William spoke. I want to be clear about something. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. Ms. Mitchell's proposal was exceptional on its own merits. I reviewed it without knowing who had written it. Her work earned her opportunities, nothing else. He stood, and somehow he seemed taller than before. As for my personal relationship with Ms. Mitchell, that began after the professional decisions were made, and I won't apologize for recognizing the most talented, most resilient, most remarkable person in this company. He looked at me, and for the first time, he let everyone see what was in his eyes. I'm in love with her, and if that's a problem for this organization, then this organization has the problem. Charlotte made a sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. Mrs. Harrington. William's voice went cold. Your employment is terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The legal department will be in touch regarding potential charges. You can't... Charlotte started. It's already done. He turned to the rest of the room. Does anyone else have concerns about Ms. Mitchell's qualifications? Silence. Complete. Absolute silence. Good. Then I suggest we adjourn. The aftermath was chaos. Charlotte escorted out by security, executives rushing to distance themselves from her, HR announcing an investigation into departmental practices. Through it all, I stood by the window, looking out at the city spread below me. 2 years of pain, of swallowed rage, of silent endurance. 2 years of being told I didn't belong, didn't deserve, didn't matter. And now this. Hey. William's voice, soft behind me. His hand, warm on my shoulder. I turned to face him. This man who had seen me when no one else would look, who had believed me when everyone else doubted, who had stood beside me when standing alone would have been so much safer. You were incredible, he said. I was terrified. That's what makes it incredible. He cupped my face in his hands. I meant what I said in there. Every word. I know. So what happens now? I looked at him, really looked at him. At the lines around his eyes that spoke of pressure and expectation. At the gray in his hair that he could easily have covered but didn't. At the man behind the name, and the money, and the power. Now, I said, we figure out the rest together. He kissed me then, right there in the glass conference room where anyone could see. And I let him. No more hiding, no more shame, no more pretending that love was something I didn't deserve. A month later, I led my first executive presentation as Senior Vice President of Strategic Marketing. The Thornton campaign launched to unprecedented success. My picture appeared in trade publications next to Williams, and for once, the story wasn't scandal. It was triumph. Some nights when the city lights blur outside our penthouse windows, yes, our windows, I finally let myself accept that too. I think about the journey that brought me here, about the girl from Southside who refused to break, about the woman who documented every slight, every insult, every injustice, knowing that someday the truth would matter. My grandmother was right. They can't keep you down unless you let them. And I never let them. Not once.